a podcast.
Diving deep into all things Texans, both on and off the field. Here's Sean Pendergast and Pro Football Hall of Famer, the General, John McClain. Welcome to Houtopia.
Week one is in the books throughout the NFL. Monday Night Football last night, man, the storylines just keep on coming. 1 week into the season, what a crazy, crazy week one it was, as we welcome you in on a Tuesday edition of the Houtopia Football Podcast. We'll do a mailbag a little bit later, but as we welcome you in, I'm Sean Pendergast, one half of Payne and Pendergast Sports Radio 610, alongside my good friend, the Hall of Famer, and our senior columnist at sportsradio610.com, John McClain. John, you and I were joking before we hit record on this bad boy. Hey, have you heard the news? Aaron Rodgers got hurt. Did you know, John? Had you heard that Aaron Rodgers got injured in Monday Night Football last night?
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if you knew that.
You'd have to be Rip Van Winkle, or you'd have to be on Uranus to not know that Rodgers blew out his Achilles. And I've been reading reports about the timeline, what it takes to heal, the difference between a quarterback like Rodgers and a running back like J.K. Dobbins. And it was saying, don't rule out Rodgers at the end of the season. I'm thinking, yeah, he turns 40 on December 2nd. But you know what? Next year training camp, that'll give him 10 months. So he should be 100% by then. So I certainly don't think, Sean, that his career's over. He does not want to go out injured.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Father Time, though, man. He's going to have a whole lot to say in that whole thing and how he ends up healing. All right, I want to get to some Texan angles in a second on this, John, but real quick, as long as we're talking about this in generalities off the top, Aaron Rodgers injured for the season. Can you ever remember something that was such a big story in the offseason and then 4 snaps in to the season, it's over? John, they put this team on Hard Knocks. This was the biggest story of the offseason, Aaron Rodgers getting traded to the Jets after 18 seasons in Green Bay. Can you ever remember something that became just such a big, I don't want to say popcorn fart, because him getting hurt is a huge bit of news, but as far as any sort of Jets or the season, that's done now. Never anything that ruled the off season. Every sports headline, he had his own PR show, Hard Knocks, as you mentioned. He had people saying Jet Life Stadium instead of MetLife Stadium. And I felt bad for him, the fans, the players, Robert Saleh and the coaches. It showed a lot of resolve to win that game in overtime. But man, oh man, they went being from a Super Bowl contender to, I can't imagine with Zach Wilson, they're going to even be a playoff contender. Well, we'll get to that. We'll see if it's Zach Wilson. We'll get to the Texan angles here in a second. Last thing before we get to those Texan angles with the Aaron Rodgers injury, John. Do you think that Aaron Rodgers is around the team this year, or do you think he just heads back to Malibu and rehabs on the West Coast at his house? I'm guessing, considering the time he put in New York and New Jersey in the offseason, to be just one of the Jets boys, that he will, if he gets the surgery in California, then he'll rehab in California. But I don't think the last we've seen him at Jet Life Stadium, because he's become too much a fabric of that organization. But you know how some guys do it. Justin Verlander, didn't see him for 2 years when he was rehabbing from Tommy John, and he'll get the utmost care. I hope that he comes back, and I hope he gets the surgery in New York or New Jersey and spends a lot of time with the team the way he did in the offseason. All right, so the Texan angles with this, John. One is just sort of a factoid here, but I guess Dwayne Brown will be the answer to a trivia question he doesn't want to be the answer to, which is, who is the guy that was it Leonard Floyd who got the sack last night for Buffalo? Who did he beat on that play to end Aaron Rodgers' 2023 season? Texans legend Dwayne Brown at left tackle. Went for a cut block, did not really connect, I guess. So Dwayne Brown, John, the unfortunate answer to a trivia question in New York. I felt bad for Dwayne watching him do his post-game media scrum by his locker. You could tell, you could just see the culpability or the responsibility he was bearing on his face there. That was tough to watch. Yeah, I felt bad for him because he's missed a lot of time. He's part of that offensive line that's the biggest weakness on the Jets. He's been hurt. He's been out. He looked like a guy that hadn't played in a lot.
And unfortunately for him, it had the worst possible results.
Yep, absolutely. Second Texans angle with this, John. These two teams play in week 14, the Texans and the Jets. This was one of those games that the Texans got because they finished last in the division. So the Jets finished last in their division. So they were matched up with each other. And then the Texans had the unfortunate luck of, the Jets finished last, but guess what? They got Aaron Rodgers in the offseason. They ain't the worst team in the division anymore. I think the Jets are back to possibly being the worst team in that division, John. So from a standpoint of a Texan scheduling standpoint, the universe is back in balance again.
Could be a huge break, Sean. Under ordinary circumstances, with a healthy Rodgers, they would have been competing not just for the playoffs, but for the division title at that point. So they give the Texans the best they had. And they still might be competing for a wild card berth. They got a great defense. They got a really good running game, loaded with backs, good receivers. But, all Zach Wilson's got to do is don't beat them. But that's a big if for him. But, man, you're right. Whatever the spread was in that game, I would have taken the Jets. Now I'm not so sure.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. And then the last Texans angle, John, should Nick Casario's phone be ringing this morning, or should Nick Casario be calling up Joe Douglas in New York to say, hey, check out these two quarterbacks I got right here, Davis Mills and Case Keenum, John, both on the odds board. Davis Mills fairly high on the odds board to be the next acquisition at quarterback for the New York Jets.
Well, that would be very interesting, considering Mills has been their backup and quote unquote competing for the starting job. And then they would trade him to the Jets. I don't know about that. I'm guessing there's a lot of quarterbacks they would look into, but why not Casario call in and say, hey, I got two veterans around here that have started, one for 2 years, the one off and on for like 11 years. What do you got to offer? Because that's one of the few teams Case Keenum hasn't played for.
That is true. Good one. Who would you rather have if you were the Jets, Keenum or Davis Mills?
Boy, from an experience standpoint, for a guy that's competed for the playoffs, been in the playoffs, and if you indeed think he's coming in to be a backup to Zach Wilson, and that if Wilson doesn't play well or gets hurt, you're going with this guy, go with Keenum, because he's been in the playoffs. He's got experience. Mills has started most of 2 seasons for a terrible team, and I'd rather have Keenum if it's a short-term deal and he was going to be the backup.
Yeah, I'm with you. If I'm the Jets, Keenum's played in big games before. He's been there and done that. We're not even sure if Davis Mills is a good quarterback. Or has that. We know he's not a good quarterback right now. Otherwise, he'd be starting for the Texans. But we know we don't even know if Davis Mills has the chops to go win a playoff game. We know Case Keenum has been in that environment before. I'm with you. I would want Case if I were them, and if I were Nick Casario and the price were right, I would trade Case. I would trade either of them. Hell, I'd trade both of them if you want to. C.J. Stroud's the future on the team. You're looking to stockpile draft picks still, I think. All right, let's quick in here on the Texans before we get to the mailbag. If you want to email a question in for the next week's mailbag, houmailbag@gmail.com. Nothing super new on the Texans front news-wise. We're waiting for Wednesday for D'Amico Ryan to give us updates on the injured Texans, probably the two, I'll say the three that Texan fans are most interested in, and curious to get your thoughts on these, John. We'll talk about the offensive line too. Jalen Petre's the big one, I think, for most people. Chest injury, bruised lung. Jimmy Ward still dealing with his hip, was out last week. And then George Fant, who left the game in Baltimore on Sunday because of what looked to be an arm injury of some sort, something about, some sort of injury on his
shoulder.
Limb. Is a shoulder? Okay. But thoughts on, I guess, I know neither of us are doctors, but thoughts on the chances of getting any of those three guys back and what the shuffle might look like on the offensive line if there's no George Fant on Sunday.
I love the way D'Amico said, I'll update you Wednesday. And when we ask him Wednesday, he won't tell us anything, because he never does. Yeah. And so we have to wait till the injury report comes out. I don't know about Fant. I'm writing a column for sportsradio610.com on Tuesday after we record about, I've never seen anything like this in all my years covering the NFL, 47 now, where a team has so many injuries in the offensive line early in the season, going back to camp. It's just, I've never seen it. It's unprecedented. It could be Josh Jones starting at right tackle, Michael Dieter starting at left guard, and that's certainly not what they signed up for. And as far as Jalen Petre, bruised lung, remember when Deshaun Watson had the collapsed lung? I don't know the difference. and broken ribs, and he never missed a game. But Petrie's a hitter. I'd be really surprised if you can spend a night in a hospital for observation in Baltimore and be able to play the next week. Jimmy Ward, no clue about his hip. I think M.K. Stewart and Eric Murray played about as well as they could play for a defense that appears to be vastly improved.
Yep, and we'll see. I wonder how Anthony Richardson, how his style of play equates to the relevance of the safety position on defense. He's got an arm; he can throw it out of the building. He just doesn't know where it's going. I don't know how much they're going to attack downfield with the Colts, or how much they're going to put the game in Anthony Richardson's hands on the ground. Their running game outside of Anthony Richardson is horrible. Deion Jackson had like 13 carries for 14 yards. Their leading ground gainer was Richardson with 10 carries for 40 yards. I don't know. What's your early read, John? We'll get on the record with prediction on Thursday's look ahead episode. What's your early feel on this thing? The Texans are actually a 1.5 point favorite in this game.
No, I've been saying since the draft, I picked the Texans to win. I still pick the Texans to win. The best thing about the Texans on Sunday at Baltimore was the way they contained the run. If it wasn't, you take away Lamar Jackson, as it was, they averaged 3.7 yards on 110 yards. And then if you take away his, they averaged 2.3. And so that run defense looked really good. And I think playing against Jackson would help them against Richardson. D'Amico Ryan said it would. So did Will Anderson Jr. Denzel Perryman said, no, they're two different players, but he didn't explain. But it seems to me when you're defensing and game planning for a mobile quarterback 2 weeks in a row, the first time you did it, that would be good. I realize Richardson is bigger and stronger and probably faster, but there's nobody more elusive than Jackson. So I'm going with the Texans. I think they're going to win a low-scoring game, and I'll be surprised if they don't.
Yep, I'm with I'm going with the Texans too. I'll have a score later in the week, John. I was pretty close on my score for the 25-9 was the final. I said 24-. I was there, man. Did you know, John? There's never been an NFL game with a final score of 25-9. It was a scoregami. There'd never been a 25-9 game. Have you ever heard of scoregami?
No, I do now because that's what I saw after the game. But
yeah,
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, 25-9. There'd never been a 25-9 final before. The Texans making history. All right, you want to do some mailbag here, John?
Absolutely.
All right, let's start it off with Chris in the ATL. He emails every week, so we start off with him. Does naming CJ a captain ensure he will be the starting quarterback all year long, aside from injury? So does this CJ Stroud voted a captain by his teammates? If his performance starts to waver, does his being a captain factor in at all to whether or not he stays on the field?
No, of course not, Chris. Of course that doesn't have anything to do with it. If he stinks it up for multiple games, he'll go to the bench, get a different perspective like Davis Mills did. Then when Mills came back in, he was a much better quarterback. So if he struggles a lot, he'll be on the bench too.
Davis was a captain last year, and he got benched for Kyle Allen at one point. Remember that?
Ooh. Kyle Allen is the backup somewhere. I don't know where, but I read it.
Buffalo.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, they should have played him last night. He couldn't play any worse.
Josh Allen.
That's the truth.
Josh Allen was abysmal last night. Chris asked an interesting follow-up, John. Chris always has these good questions that are kind of outside the realm. He said, fun question. If the city of Houston named a captain for the city, just a captain for the city, what famous or well-known Houstonian would you vote for? I've got 3 on my list here, John.
For the Texans?
No, for the city. Like if the city of Houston, if you voted for a captain of the city, just to rep the city out there, you know what I mean?
Mattress Mac.
That's a great one.
Sylvester Turner, who I think has been an outstanding ambassador for Houston, a great PR guy. And the third one would be the best PR guy I've ever seen, J.J. Watt.
Okay, the J.J. Watt's a good one. I have 3 other ones, John. Bun B, I think would be a good captain for the city of Houston. Bun B is a great representative of the city, loves H-Town. Tillman Fertitta. I think Tillman would be fun as a captain for the city of Houston. And I had The Undertaker as my third one, John. That's the wrestling fan in me. But The Undertaker, he was sort of the captain of the WWE locker room back in the day, is what they say. All right. Thank you, Chris, for the question. As always, let's go. Let's see. Donald in Spring. Things seem to change in the second half of that game against the Ravens with no Jalen Petrie out there. Where does he stack up on the list of most valuable Texans for you, John McClain? That's Donald in Spring asking that question. Where's Petrie in your pecking order of valuable Texans?
Right now, quarterback's the most valuable because he is on every team. I think defensively, Will Anderson Jr. is the most important because he has a chance to be the first double-digit sack guy since JJ had 16 in 2018. And Damian Pierce needs to get the ball more. He would be third. But I would put Petrie, who he's a captain like Jimmy Ward, but he can play up, he can play back, he plays the run, he plays the pass. So I'd put him fourth. Now, Laramie Tunsil I'd put in the top 5, and then I'd put Petrie probably 5 or 6.
I put Petrie ahead of Pierce. Pierce looks like he dropped a little too much weight, John. He looks a little too sleek for me. I need him to get back to last year where he was cracking skulls all the time. Didn't he drop some weight because he's going to be catching more balls out of the backfield this year, right? Is that what we were hearing in training camp?
I think it's ridiculous throwing the ball. He gets enough punishment as it is. That's why they got Devin Singletary. But I think a lot of it had to do with the blocking. But he had, 2 or 3 5-yard runs. They didn't get him the ball more.
All right, let's see here. Next. Oh, by the way, Will Anderson. Did you rewatch the game, John? Have you watched it a second or third time yet?
Sure.
I think against almost any other quarterback, Will Anderson has 3 sacks in that game. He was on rewatch. He was all over the place in that game on Sunday.
Very disruptive. A lot of attention had to go to him. The first time he hit Jackson, it was an interception by Steven Nelson, made a great diving play. Then he sacked him later. And I thought John Grenard did well.
Yeah.
John had 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. It amazes me. The official stats come from the game book compiled by the NFL statistician. But a lot of people use Pro Football Focus, Next Generation Stats, just take for some other reason. None of them are official. And so I see, well, Will Anderson had this or John Grenard had this. But the fact is, that's not what they had. That's what officially they had whatever the game book says. But both those guys played really well. And they blitzed a little bit. Petrie twice blitzed, and he was a factor on both blitzes.
Joe Q emails in about Kadarius Toney, John. He says, I find it hard not to wonder if number 19 for the Chiefs had the Lions on the money line on Thursday night last week. I'm mostly facetious, but not 100%. I can't recall a wide receiver ever being so singularly responsible for a team losing a game. Wide receivers have a great opportunity to shave points by dropping passes. I don't think 19, Toney, could have schemed the pick 6 on purpose. No, he couldn't have. I don't think Kadarius Toney was on the take, John, but I do think Kadarius Toney is a loser. I think his deleting his Twitter account after the game, and then when the Giants lose on Sunday night, he's right back on social media trolling the Giants. Like, go away, man. Just go away.
He had issues at Florida. The Giants got rid of him. Now the Chiefs probably would like to, but they can't. As somebody said, if he just knocked down every pass thrown to him, Chiefs would have won the game.
That's true. Yeah. That pick 6 was the difference right there by Brian
Branch.
Branch.
One on the last drive. It was right in his hands, and they could have won. Well,
he did knock that one down, though, John. He did knock down. But if he had knocked down the pick 6, they would have been much better off. Bobby D asks, what national broadcast do you guys enjoy the most? Play-by-play, color, sideline, not the studio show. So game day team, John. The Nance Romo Wolfson team, the Tirico Collinsworth. I guess it used to be Michelle Tafoya. I'm not sure who does the NBC sidelines now, but do you have a particular one that's your favorite amongst the national NFL broadcasts?
Yeah, I don't pay any attention to anybody on the sideline. To me, it's the hardest job, especially in college when those coaches are so rude a lot of the times. And but I love the analysts, and I like Aikman and Buck. Tony Romo's not as good as he used to be, but I love Jim Nance mainly because I've known him since the late 70s. And I like Mike Tirico, although I thought he said a really stupid thing about putting the Ascus next to the Chiefs' loss after that first game.
That was bad.
And Collinsworth, he's got a lot of opinions. But if I had to pick one, I think I would go with Aikman and Buck.
They're good. Joe Buck doesn't annoy me on the football broadcast like he annoyed me during the World Series runs for the Astros back in the day. I think he's very talented. I think Aikman's good. Mine's NBC. I do like Tirico, and I thought what Tirico said was incredibly stupid on Thursday night. if for no other reason, it just minimizes a great game that you just got done calling. And basically you're telling the audience, like, well, whatever you watch doesn't really matter the last 3 hours. Thanks for investing your time in watching me and paying my salary, but didn't really matter.
I guarantee you he regrets that.
I'm sure he does, which is one of the reasons I like him. I think he's very self-aware. I think he's beyond just football. Like his ability to call other sports.
Ooh, yeah.
He's arguably the gold standard among play-by-play guys overall. And Collinsworth doesn't rub me the wrong way that he rubs a lot of people. I think Collinsworth, people get annoyed by Collinsworth sometimes. I like Collinsworth. I like his energy. I'm not looking to get, complete football 101 from my color commentators. I like being entertained and learn a few things along the way. And so I don't mind. I think Collinsworth and Tirico are a good contrast with each other too. Collinsworth is kind of that country bumpkin Kentucky guy, and Tirico is a very buttoned up Syracuse educated broadcaster.
I watched once live and once on replay that white guy make his debut on CBS, and of course he's smooth as silk. We knew he would be. I thought he did a good job.
It's too crowded, John. Those studio shows,
they're always too crowded. Yes.
Yeah, but that seems to be an easy problem to fix. Just get rid of 2 people. You know what I mean? Like of course, I shouldn't be advocating for people getting fired in broadcasting. They'll come after me next. So no, by all means, have 10 guys on the studio show.
You're untouchable.
Yeah,
you're untouchable. If they called up Parker Hillis and say, we want to trade for Sean Pendergast, he'd say, that's the program director. Nope. You can have anybody else but Sean. He's untouchable.
Okay, I appreciate that. But if they got offered 2 first-round picks, I would say to Laramie Tunsil, I would say to Parker what Laramie Tunsil said to Greer. I would have taken that package as well. Chris in the ATL gets another one in here. This is a good one though. We just got done talking about Dameon Pierce. I get the Ravens defensive line is solid, and the Texans had a makeshift O-line, but they've got to run the ball better and be better balanced. Pierce and Montgomery are arguably the best RB tandem they've had in years. Rex bleeping Burkhead isn't here anymore. Multiple exclamation points. He says, my question after venting, who should take the most blame for the poor running game for the Texans against the Ravens? Bobby Slowick, the offensive line, or the running backs?
The offensive line. I think everything that Bobby Slowick calls, he's going to have to take into consideration about the line. Now, at some point this year, after Titus Howard and Juice Scruggs come back, and you never know, maybe by then Jarrett Patterson will be playing left guard, but at some point I think the line will be better, Sean, and they'll look back and go, man, remember when we went through all this turmoil early in the season? What they do have to do is run it more. The 49ers are predominantly a running team to set up the pass. That's what Slowick would like to do, but you can't come in 4 or 5 series, run on first down and come back to a pass on the second down. It's too obvious. But first-time head coach, first-time play caller, first-time quarterback, they're all going to learn.
Yeah, the operation was not smooth on Sunday. That's the biggest thing. I think if we're looking at things they need to improve week 1 to week 2, like the running game is going to be a work in progress. I get it. I don't expect them to turn into a juggernaut on the ground, but getting the plays in, not using your timeouts, not using them all up with 8 minutes to go in the half. Like these are things that this is high school stuff, All right, a few more, John, here. Janice in Shenandoah. Shout out to the female listeners. We appreciate you. Joe Burrow got $219 million guaranteed. Will Trevor Lawrence finally be the one who surpasses Deshaun Watson's pesky $230 million guaranteed number?
Janice, I believe he will. I think this time next year. But if Tua Tagovailoa stays healthy and that offense is so prolific, he's going to be the one of those guys. Both of them will get new deals, and both of them may surpass Deshaun Watson, who may say, hey, I want to renegotiate.
Oh, please. John, he's got to play more than one good game before he renegotiates his deal.
Well, he didn't even play a good game against Cincinnati.
That's what I'm saying. Seth and I went through his game log with Cleveland on the show today. He's played 7 games with the Browns. He's had 1 game where his passer rating's been over 100. He's had 2 games where he's thrown for more than 200 yards.
Wow.
More than 200. Not more.
Wait till the weather gets bad and the wind starts.
Yeah. All right. A couple more here. Jonathan on the west side. T. Higgins in a Texans uniform next year. What say you?
I say no. They're not going to go spend a fortune on a wide receiver.
Why? They need one. They need a playmaker.
T. Higgins. they're going to. T. Higgins is good when he's in a subordinate role. They need to draft and develop their own guys.
How do we know, John? How do we know he's he has he ever been given the opportunity to spread his wings and be the number one guy?
Nope.
And you're saying that hasn't happened because he can't do it, is what I'm hearing.
Well, it hasn't happened because he wants a lot of money.
Yeah.
Instead of giving him a lot of money, not knowing. Now, if they watch him and they say, this is the guy that can be our go-to guy, big play guy for 5 years, then they should do it. But, boy, you got to know that beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, because that market is expensive. That's not the running back market. The wide receiver.
Every year is a good receiver draft.
Yeah.
So many of them come out, and you don't have to get them in the first round. But although Nico Collins looked good, 6 catches, 80 yards.
He did.
Robert Woods was a first down machine. They still need a guy that is a big play guy who can stretch the defense. Maybe that'll be Tank Dell, but not many 5'8", 165-pound guys are that. But I certainly wouldn't give up big bucks unless I was sure, especially now, like say before the trade deadline, because we know they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, I think, look, Jonathan's question was just T. Higgins in a Texans uniform. What say you? That was it. He didn't say when they'd get him or how they'd get him. If it's a trade during the season for the right to sign him. Those are tricky things for me. They did that with Laramie Tunsil, you're trading draft capital for the right to overpay a guy. That's a double whammy right there. So I definitely don't want them to do that. Like T. Higgins is not the difference between them making a playoff run this year and not making a playoff run. He would become their best receiver, I think, immediately, just purely from a talent standpoint.
Sure.
If he were to come here, they're going to have a ton of money next season, though, John. I mean, they're going to spend it somewhere. And I think wide receiver, would you agree? I mean, that's probably one of the biggest positions of need on this team, especially if John Mechie, we can't plan the future as if John Mechie is part of that right now, in my mind, at least.
I think that's one of the many things they should spend a lot of money on when they have a big free agency period to help them become a playoff contender.
I agree. That and the post-game show. That's what I would like them to spend a lot of money on.
What about the pregame show?
The pregame show too, but the pregame show. Both of them.
Boy, you're talking about somebody that's untouchable. I want more money. You're like T. Higgins.
I am. They're going to
pay the man. Pay him right now.
That's right. They're going to trade me to Jacksonville.
Hey, whatever you're getting for those long pre and post game, and how late you got to stay up doing our podcast, and then get up at 4:30 next morning, they need to quadruple it.
Okay, I like that, John. You're going to become my agent in this whole thing. I like it. All right, last one. Astros rotation. This one's from Michael. He says, guys, I like when you guys talk about the Astros starting rotation as if the playoffs were to start tomorrow. That's kind of our bracketology thing, John. You're like, if the playoffs were to start tomorrow and the Astros were in a best of 5 series, who would be your 4 starters for a best of 5 series?
Well, 3 would be JP France. And it wouldn't be Hunter Brown. And
so Verlander, Framber are an easy one too, right?
Yeah, and JP should be the easy third one because Javier hadn't pitched worth a darn all year. And then Hunter Brown has had at least a few good games, not lately. But I've done knowing Dusty, he'll go with Javier, hoping Javier will magically discover the magic from last season. But Javier has been a huge disappointment from the get-go. And then Jose Urquidy, who's been in the bullpen, ERA almost 7 in his 4 relief appearances. What a race. When I wrote my Astros column yesterday and posted it, the Rangers were out of the playoffs. Now the Rangers are tied for second place or something. They go from out of the wild card race to in the wild card race, and that's kind of the way it's been. It was fun for the Astros to run away with everything, and we're all just bored waiting for the second round. But now with this incredible race in which every game is essential to the playoff race, it is so exciting.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's fun to sit down and watch meaningful games. This is like watching playoff games right now. Because let's face it, the Astros could miss the playoffs. It's not they're right there with these other teams. There's 3 spots for 4 teams right now. Basically, right?
Yep, going in last night's game, and we're recording this on Tuesday, going into the first Oakland game, 9 of 12 against the A's and the Royals, the worst team in baseball. They lose 4-0 to the A's. 8 times this year they've hit double digits. Next game, scored 2 or fewer.
Yeah, and that's been a theme for 2 years now. Like, this is not This is not something that's been going on since the All-Star break or something. This is 2 years now where they tease you. They're like, okay, there they are. The bats are back, 1 through 9, the dream lineup, the lineup of death. And then they come back the next day. 2 guys get hits last night. Pena and Houtopia are the only 2 guys to get hits last night at all.
They need to look at that closer for the A's. May.
He got 2 on,
no out. He's got Alvarez, Bregman, and Tucker. No problem. Easy outs. Game over. That guy did a great job. I don't know what he's done the rest of the season. I didn't even know a team that wins 44 games needs a closer. But the fact is, he did tremendously. And I feel much better about the bullpen and the hitting than I do about the starting pitcher right now. Even Fromber, he had a quality start. He gets no support, but Fromber's pitching well enough. Everybody's comfortable with him and Verlander. And as we record this, Verlander's going against the A's tonight. This time next week, they're playing the Orioles. That could be a preview of the American League Championship Series. Good. And those last 6, at some point, I was worried, oh, man, they got to go on the road to Seattle and Arizona. Now I welcome them going on the road. And the Mariners should win everything because they get at the Rangers 3, home for the Astros 3, home for the Rangers for 4. And they've got it right there, but they've won. I think they're 3-8 in their last 11, something like that.
Yeah, they've cooled off, no doubt. They were the hottest team in baseball for a while. They've cooled off. They were great in August. September has not been nearly as kind to them as August was. Hey, John, man, the A's, even bad teams win games, and you know the old saying, teams aren't going to themselves. Okay, so they're bad teams need closers too, John. Every now and again. You like that guy though, huh?
I do. And if they, they went in 9-1 against the A's, and if they win these next 2, win the series, that's fine. I panicked after the first Padres game on Friday night, and then they beat them 2 in a row. So I think they're going to win the division. Fangraphs has them at a 15.7% to win the World Series. That's second to the Braves, who are 30% to win the World Series.
That's the highest the Astros have been all year, 15.7. I mean, they were down in the single digits for the longest time for a while there.
Yeah, after getting shut out by the A's, they might be like 2%.
The computers don't know how to overreact, John. They're not like you and me. All right. John, what do you got going on your various platforms this week?
I have a column on the Astros Monday. I have a column on the Texans Monday, and I'm working on a column Texans offensive line for Tuesday. I'm going to do C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson for Wednesday, and then I have to come up with something new for Thursday, probably on the Astros. So I got columns every day. So does Sean Bajani, and you can go to sportsradio610.com, and you can hear the Houtopia Football Podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wherever it is you get your podcast, click that subscribe button so you get it sent to you automatically. You'll get it sent wherever it is you listen to your podcast. They'll get it to you automatically when you subscribe. We love that. We appreciate everybody who subscribes, downloads, watching on YouTube, and we stream it on video as well. If you're just listening audio, know that we stream it on video as well. You just got to make sure you're following the station, sportsradio610.com, downloading that Audacy app as well, as John mentioned. And hey, while you're there, whatever platform you get your podcasts on, give us a review. If it's available to you, give us a review. We prefer good ones as opposed to mean ones. But do that as well. That always helps. Any sort of interaction like that helps the podcast, and we love delivering this to you guys as we are 1 week into this 18-week odyssey that is the NFL regular season. Texans, Colts on Sunday. That'll be the next episode. Thursday will be our preview for that Sunday game. We'll preview the game. We'll do a little for real or fugazi. We got a lot to get to on that Thursday episode. We appreciate you tuning into all of it. We appreciate our producer, James Jackson. He gets these episodes out to you guys in a timely fashion, does a great job producing the podcast, keeping us in line and all that good stuff. So for James and John, I'm Sean, and we're out of time. We will see all of you a little later on this week for the next episode of the Houtopia Football Podcast. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.